blah, 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 blah.
Welcome to the Our Forever Smiles podcast, a podcast created to support mothers of children who were born with clefts and those who love them. I'm your host, Laura Arroyo, and I'm also a mother of a daughter who was born with a surprise cleft palate. I know the challenges you face every day. Whether you have just learned the difficult news of your baby's cleft lip or palate, you're in the midst of pre-op or post-op, or you're an OG cleft mom, this podcast is for you. In a weekly conversation, we will talk about everything from feeding and speech therapy to surgery and school. We'll share tips from guest experts and advocates and even share a little joy in the process. You can listen to Our Forever Smiles wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the Our Forever Smiles Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. I am Laura Arroyo. Thank you to all of our subscribers, new and old. I appreciate all of the support that we've received from this wonderful community. You can listen to us via Apple, Spotify, and everywhere that podcasts are available. So don't forget to subscribe if you have not yet, and stay tuned. As a note, we are not medical doctors, and we do not intend for you to use the information that we share here as medical advice. We are parents and advocates who love our children, and we are sharing our own personal experiences. So I'm not sure when this episode is going to come out quite yet, but we just came back from CleftCon, and I had the absolute pleasure of meeting so many cleft-affected individuals and also other parents like myself. And I've seen Gloria online, and I swore that I invited her to be on the podcast, but when I talked to her in person, she said that I didn't. And it's such an awful miss here because I feel like Gloria's story is absolutely valuable, and also just seeing her children's book has been a wonderful resource, I think, in the community. Gloria Madera is a former journalist now navigating life as a mom and wife. After spending a decade sharing impactful stories about her communities, she is working to teach her cleft cutie Archie and other kids to embrace their differences and live their lives to the fullest. She became inspired to write children's books as a way to help her son learn more about himself and how to educate others about his differences. By sharing Archie's story, she also hopes to empower parents as they continue their cleft journey with their own children. Welcome, Gloria.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I don't know why I just got emotional about that. Just thank you so much for being on. I feel a true connection to you as well because I don't know if I've shared on the podcast or not, but I actually went to school for English literature. And so I fully planned on having a career as anything in writing, whether that is journalism or tech writing. And I'm also an author. And so English and just writing and communication is something that is really near and dear to my heart. So I saw Gloria on stage as a host or a moderator for one of the panels at CleftCon. And as I was watching her speak, I'm like, she is so good at this. And she speaks so clearly. So then when you got off stage, I asked you about it. And so this is not really cleft related, but it is because it ties into the reason why you wanted to write and pivot your purpose. And so is that something that you did early on? Did you study English? Or talk to us about your career in journalism.
Yes, I'm a former TV news reporter and anchor. And I went to school and I double majored only because I changed course so many times in college that it only made sense. So it didn't look like I was just graduating late just to graduate late. But I double majored in journalism and in English. Journalism was not on my radar, to be 100% honest, only because I always looked at news anchors and reporters as like movie stars or TV stars. I just thought that was out of reach. But I was not doing well in college as a ophthalmology major, microbiology major. My dad was like, we need to reevaluate. Obviously, science is not your strong suit. It never has been. So I don't know why you chose a medical career. And I fully understood his reasoning for that. So we went through my likes and interests, and he goes, maybe you should try journalism. I think reporting might be something for you because you're nosy, you're always in people's business, you ask a million questions, and you like to talk. So I thought, sure, I'll try one class. And I fell in love with it. He's right. I am nosy. I am in people's business for a purpose, not just to be a nosy person. So, yeah, I started journalism classes in college, interned at a TV station. And so that kind of solidified my interest in TV news and and then I graduated college with no jobs. I interviewed for a couple of TV stations and nada. It's like went into insurance. It's like working in the call center because I needed to pay bills. And then I got a call from a TV station in the town I went to school, like that I went to college. And I had a friend working there at the time who really advocated for me. So thank you, Casey. And then they flew me out. I interviewed and I landed my first TV news job. And from there, I worked in news in Lubbock, Texas, my hometown of El Paso, Texas. And then I finished off in San Antonio, Texas. And I just rose through the ranks and made the anchor desk, which was really fun. And that was my dream. And it was a blast. Experienced a lot of cool things. But yeah, I just learned to talk to people because it's what I did every single day.
So my career in writing, of course, like many people that major in like English literature, and they typically go into like teaching roles. And so that was what I really wanted to do. And then I realized working in public schools and that type of thing, you're not really, the passion that you have for teaching children is not what you're really doing. And so with that realization, I decided to take another path. And so I've worked in learning and development, and now I'm also a tech writer. And so that's like where my journey went. But just like doing this podcast, what I edit out all the time is all of the ums and ahs and you knows and the extra filler words that I have. And so I was just so impressed to see you like on the stage and not like, I'm like, captivated by that. And I just found that to be so, so cool.
I do say and quite a bit. But as I just said, but I do try not to, but it still comes out. It's natural.
Yeah. And so are you still working in TV?
The morning news, which I loved. I was very apprehensive about it at the beginning because he wants to wake up at 2:30 in the morning. But once I got into it, that was the newscast I wanted to be a part of because it's just way more fun. You can be a little bit more lively than the 6 and 10 o'clock news, where you don't really see a ton of the personality of the news anchors. You do in some aspects, but not really. It's very hard-hitting news. The crime, the politics, all of that stuff is really enforced in your night news. In the morning, we have that, of course. And I say we as if I'm still there. They have that, but you also have the fun stories too. And you get to banter with your co-anchors or with weather a little bit more. There's more not free time, but there's more free play there. So that's what I really liked, which is funny because when I first started in news, I didn't like that. I just felt uncomfortable showing my personality, I think, because I have a very sarcastic sense of humor. And I just didn't know how that would sit with people. But honestly, everyone took to it pretty well. That was great. But waking up at 2:30 in the morning, then my son Archie was born. So a lot of having a baby, and he did not sleep through the night until he turned 2 years old. He just refused. So my husband and I it just wasn't like the vibe of trying to split up. Okay, I need to be in bed by 8:30 so I could wake up, and then him taking the brunt of that, and then having to get him ready for daycare. And then we were just passing ships and through the day because he worked until 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And then I'm like, we're trying to eat dinner, and then I'm like rushing to get to bed. And so we really didn't talk. We didn't have a relationship like that. And so I needed to change. And I got into public relations. And actually, how I got the job that I have, so I do public relations for a healthcare system. And I work with a hospital that my son is a patient of. And that's how I got the job. The world works in mysterious ways. So it was a blessing, but I'm on a normal schedule and have more time. I'm a more patient mom too, because I was just always exhausted. It's not normal to wake up at that time or for people who work overnight shifts. Like it's just not a normal thing. And it was hard because I think so much of your identity is also entangled in being a TV news anchor reporter. That's how people know you is, oh, you're the person from the news. And so when you step away from that, then you're like, I'm going to say a nobody, but you're just like a normal human. And so that was difficult, just going from a job I knew and I truly did love, but it was just time to step away. And I stepped into a role I had never done before. I never did PR. And so I learned on the go, but I'm pretty confident in my skills now. But it's been a cool journey.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I think that when I learned about Giselle's cleft at birth. And of course, like my mother, what I thought was going to be my motherhood journey obviously was turned upside down with that diagnosis. And I want to go back to when you learned about Archie's cleft. Now, were you still a news anchor during that time? And what was that day like when you learned about it?
So it was 2020. And I emphasize that because no one could go to the doctor appointments with you. So I was always by myself, which is not how I imagined pregnancy to be. Like I always imagined your partner to be there with you. He was able to come with me to the anatomy scan. And that's actually when I learned about it. But at the time I worked the night shift because I had just moved to San Antonio. And yeah, so he went with me to the anatomy scan. And we also had to do it twice because he wasn't cooperating. They wanted them to move a little bit, but not too much. And he just was like settled in his way and wouldn't face the camera. And so I had to do it again. But yeah, then my husband had to go to work. So I thought everything was fine. Husband left. I was like, well, I'm just going to see the OB and then go home. And that's when she told me that they saw a cleft lip and they're assuming because of the size of his cleft lip that the palate is also affected, though they can't be 100% sure. And so she said, but I'm going to send you to a perinatal specialist. So because they have better cameras, maybe they can see something that I'm not seeing, or maybe they'll see his face more clearly and there is nothing. But she did tell me, like, I'm pretty sure there's a cleft lip and palate. So I immediately started crying as soon as she told me that, just because hearing anything's wrong with your baby or anything like that, it's immediately devastating. And then I had no idea what a cleft was. I was so ignorant to that. I didn't know anyone with it, or no one shared that with me. No experience with it. And so I felt like I just blamed myself a lot. What did I do during my pregnancy? Did I not take my prenatals quick enough? Or you just start going through the list. My doctor did tell me that I didn't do anything. It wasn't because of any of that, or like labor. So I ran to the car and I called my husband, and he was at work. So I think he just held it together. He was like, okay, we'll talk about it when I get home. And then I had to call my mom, and then call my dad, and then call my mother-in-law, and call my father-in-law, because they were all expecting updates because it was exciting. We got to see the baby, and having to explain something I didn't know about was really draining, mentally, emotionally. Like, it was just draining. So I called out sick from work because I was like, absolutely no way I'm going in today. And I just Googled and sat with it, and it just was really hard. It was really hard.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know why so usually I'm fine. I don't know why I'm so emotional today. But yeah, no, I think hearing stories of when people got their initial diagnosis, just of course it like takes me back as well. And I think back to like my own feelings, and I can't imagine how other people feel or deal with that news as well. Like for me, my mom was here, of course, because she was here for her birth, but I didn't have, just as you mentioned, I didn't have all the information, so I just didn't talk to anyone. Like I really internalized a lot of that. And I can't imagine you having to have, I couldn't even tell one person, let alone have to tell four. And I think the best description of that is like exhausting. It's exhausting emotionally. And I think that, yeah, it's just really hard. But just going back to the ultrasound, so the tech didn't seem suspicious. I feel like sometimes the conversations that I've had with people, they're like, I could tell something was wrong because the tech was like being weird. And I think usually I think it's from mothers that have had a few children. They can tell. They're like, can tell.
Yeah, it was my first pregnancy, my first experience with it. I will say I wasn't very appreciative of like her approach, but I think it was more so, I think she was frustrated that he just wouldn't move the way she wanted him to move. And so like that part, but also we had a gender reveal planned, right? And so we were just like, we don't want to know the gender. And so I think just because we had our eyes closed during parts of it and we're trying to be all secretive about the gender of all things, that I think we just didn't notice too much of maybe her noticing his face and his mouth. So if she was putting it down, I wasn't picking it up. But I honestly feel for you and for other moms who have the surprise, because at least I had some time to process and like come to terms with it a little bit. Still unknown. Like you don't know what the future looks like, but I can't imagine just learning about it and being like, here you go, here's your baby. And also, so I feel for you on that one. I don't know how I would have dealt with that.
Yeah. It is. I talk about this all the time on the podcast. Like, what would you have rather had? And there's advantages and disadvantages of both, right? I didn't spend my pregnancy really worried. I didn't enjoy pregnancy. I'm open and admit to that. I'm just like you were like, I just thought things were going to be different, you know? I thought I was going to be like on the treadmill and like eating salads, and like when I was really like head in the toilet, like give me anything greasy, and that was my journey. But it was uneventful. I was just miserable, but I had a healthy pregnancy. I was fine. And I think that when you learn early on, you spend your pregnancy very worried, and you have this period of time where you're consumed by all these things on Google, and you don't really get to enjoy that part of it. Versus like with me, I enjoyed my pregnancy, but that newborn phase, I don't have, like, I wish I took more pictures. I wish that I enjoyed those first days when all I did was like worry and not sleep, and a lot of it is like a blur to me because of like the lack of sleep, the disconnection like with my family, having to explain things, having to learn so many things at once, like just realizing, just like I think we talked about this at ClefCon, it's like realizing that you're like starving your baby and that was like so wild.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, things like that.
Yeah, I know when I gave birth to Archie, you know, I didn't even see his cleft, to be honest. I think I was just enamored with this baby that I birthed. But then I like remembered and was like, oh my God, let me see his face. And it was beautiful. All babies are, but he was mine. So he was beautiful. I honestly was like scared to touch his mouth or touch his face because I didn't know if it would hurt him. Like you just don't know. There was a speech therapist who came in to help like with feeding for him. And I was like, breastfeed him. But everything on the internet told me it wasn't gonna happen. But I was like, Liz is expert here. And to top it off, like she had pulled down her mask and showed us her scar and said, I had a cleft. And so your baby's gonna be just fine. He's gonna be great. Yeah. And so that honestly was such a sigh of relief for us, like seeing an adult with cleft, because like I said, I didn't know anybody with it. That was so reassuring. And then being told, oh, I could breastfeed. And then I thought I was breastfeeding for days and I was not. And that landed us in NICU. And I just started the pumping journey. And for any moms who exclusively pump, bless you for doing that because I lasted all of like maybe 1 month. And I was like, this is not it. This every time I sit down to pump, the dog needs to be let out, the baby's crying. And I'm like, I'm trying to get you breakfast, I promise. And just I think the stress of it all, the supply just was not meeting the demand. It just weren't vibing with that. We went to formula, which is totally fine. Both my kids have had formula, but yeah, that's just like an added stress on top of everything else. So I was like, for my sanity and for everybody's sanity living in this house. But
Yeah, I would have to go to like appointments. Giselle's like her Cleft team is at UNC. I'm in North Carolina. So I would have to go maybe it's like 45 minutes. Actually, no, it's an hour away. And in the beginning, I was meeting the demand too much actually. And like I would be at the appointments because I couldn't like pump. I had the, what do you call those? Portable? Yeah,
mhm.
the pumps, but they don't do what they need to do really, the ones that you have at home. And I was like all over the hospital, like leaking everywhere. I was like leaking through the pad. It was so embarrassing. And like, I was just like, I didn't, I look like a first time mom. Like, I feel like everybody was looking at me like, ah. And I hated that feeling like of, oh, this girl is having trouble. So
She is going through it right now.
yes. And so I lasted about 5 months and then, I weaned off of it. But, and then the other thing that the ENT had mentioned to me because Giselle had some reflux is, which I've heard like contradicting things about this. He was saying because the breast milk is so light that it's easier to come up. And so maybe I should like supplement with formula so that because it's a little thicker. And then also I felt like she would do her reflux was better when she was on formula. And so then I started going through that whole thing of, okay, should I do an elimination diet? It's like, all right, let's take out dairy. I have a cup of coffee in the morning. Do we need to take that out? And I was already under so much stress. Can you imagine like having to like figure that whole thing out? It's just, no, I'm just not going to do it. It's over. Yeah. And it was like right around the holidays too. I wanted to like at least have a glass of wine. Jeez. You know, so it's just a lot. It is a lot. And how old when you went through that? Was Archie just weeks old when he was admitted back into the NICU?
To him on the week before his birthday is the week before Thanksgiving. So it was a Tuesday. I was induced because they also said that he was small. So I needed to be induced. I don't know. But it was my first kid. I just went through, I was just like, whatever you tell me, I'm going to do. So I was induced 2 weeks before my due date. And then we were there Wednesday, Thursday night. We went home. And then Friday morning, we went to his pediatrician appointment, where it was the newborn appointment. And we were admitted into the NICU literally like within the hour when they weighed him. And he had lost significant amount of weight. And yeah, that was a whole whirlwind because my mom was here too, like for the birth to help. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll be right back. Packed my hospital bag. Like, yes, this is my new thing with the hospital bag and my little baby. And then she was calling me because it had been hours. And it's such a whirlwind. Like we went, they checked his weight. Then they said, go to lactation. And so they do that thing where they weigh the baby, then you feed, and then they weigh again to see how much the intake was. And he had taken nothing, like not even a drop in. And so they immediately admitted us into NICU. So he was literally 3 days old. And then I immediately started pumping so that they could get some into his body. And then just IVs are going in. And he also had jaundice. And so that was a whole thing. And then my mom's calling and I'm bawling because I'm like, I don't know what's happening. Like, why are you poking him with that? And I think the most disturbing part of that was they had tried to put it in an IV in his arm and on his hands, and they kept blowing. And they like sent me to go pump I walk back in and he's got an IV in his head, which I guess is like a normal thing for babies. Like their head and their feet is like where veins are most prominent. I'm not in the medical field. When I walked in and saw a needle in my baby's head, I was like, I about fainted. What are you doing? And I like had a cow over that. But then they talked me down. He's fine. This is just where we're able to get an IV easier for baby, like small, tiny babies. So I was like, okay. And then I'm walking around the NICU to see if any other babies have this in their head. And there were a couple, but I just want to make sure, what are you not telling me? And then from there, it just felt very unclear in the NICU because the nurses can't really tell you too much, or at least at the hospital I was at. Like they all had to wait for the doctor, but then the doctor only rounds so many times. So it was a whole experience. And then it was right before Thanksgiving, and we're like, please, can we literally begged to go home for Thanksgiving? And the doctor was like, because he started gaining weight and past his bilirubin or whatever for jaundice. And so, like, begging, please let us go home for Thanksgiving. And they're like, if anything happens, you come to the ER, like, you come back. And we're like, okay. But by then, we were like feeding with bottles and like learning how to do Dr. Brown bottles with the blue valve and everything. So we didn't actually have to be readmitted, thankfully, after that.
Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but I need a little bit of help. If you're listening to this on the Apple Podcast app or YouTube, you may see a follow plus sign or a subscribe button. If you're able to, it would mean the world to me if you could follow or subscribe. That's the best way to support this show. If you subscribe, I'm able to show it to potential guests or different brands. It helps to grow the show and reach more communities to continue building awareness about the cleft lip and palate journey on a global scale. Thank you so much. Back to the conversation. Yeah, I couldn't get Giselle's feeding down, and I was also misguided about the breastfeeding as well. And so she was also admitted to the NICU. And I think one of the things that I think what parents aren't really prepared for is how much you lose control once they're admitted to the NICU and they start talking about, I remember even Giselle's team talking about like a medical social worker, and I'm like, social worker? Like, I'm like, what is going on? Like, it makes you feel unfit in a way. Like, it's such a weird thing. And I think that's not really the intention of the hospital. I think that these people are brought in to actually support you, but it's not communicated in that way at all. And I remember when they admitted Giselle into the NICU, I was asking them, the doctor called me that night because I was still in the hospital, and they said, hey, we're going to have to admit Giselle into the NICU because we can't get her bilirubin down. And she's obviously like dehydrated. And so we're going to admit her. And so I said, can you wait until my fiance gets here? He's like pulling into the parking lot. And they straight up told me no, like we're taking her now. And that was, whoa, like I was just like, okay, I'm not really in control here. But there's, I think I've spoken to a few professionals, and we have Micah Clark on the podcast as well to help you navigate that and how to advocate for yourself, even when your child is going to be admitted into the NICU, and how to ask those right questions or the appropriate questions and how to challenge appropriately. I think even just in your case, what you were saying, like I would have also blown a gasket seeing an IV in my daughter's head. Like somebody needs to explain that. And I think that, I don't know whether they're just too busy, they don't care, or what the situation is, but I think having something like that, or having someone there to explain, hey, this is what we're going to do because of this, is like really important and really valuable. Going back to when Archie was first admitted, did you see anything, like any signs that he wasn't being properly fed, or did you feel like this is just the way he is? Or
caveat of being a first-time mom is that you don't really know anything. And then I don't have any siblings, so it's not like I have nieces and nephews or I watched somebody go through this. I love babies and I always have, and I babysat, but never like a newborn. I just took what they were telling me at face value. I have since done a lot of my own research and talked to other moms and learned from experience. But yeah, they told me, oh, he's swallowing. With breastfeeding, you also can't see anything. There's not a visual element where a bottle you can see empties. And the first couple of days, your milk doesn't come in. So really you just have colostrum. And then, so it's not like I knew what an empty feeling was. And so I don't know, I put him on there for 20 minutes like he told me to. I switch him over. He was kind of fussy, but I didn't think anything of it. I just assumed that's how newborns are. They're coming out of the womb and going into this crazy world, and they're like wanting to be back in mom's tummies. And he had dirty diapers initially. So we all thought it was fine. And really, I don't know if it was like hit or miss. Like sometimes he takes them in, sometimes he didn't. I truly, I don't know, and I'll never know. But to answer your question, I was a little fussy, but I didn't think too much of it. I didn't think it was that bad. Funny because I look back at pictures of him, like we took a family photo right before we're about to leave the hospital, and his pants are like up to his chest. He was a tiny baby, but that's also why they told me I had to be induced. So I just trusted the process a little too much, maybe. But I just took it all in as they were telling me. And so I don't know. I never experienced any of that before. So to me, it just felt like that's what it was supposed to be like.
Yeah. And then you trust the process so much. And then you feel guilty for trusting the process.
Yeah. I immediately started crying when they told me like he's dehydrated, like he's severely, like how much weight he lost. And then I started feeling, oh my God, I have not been feeding my own child. Who gave me a child? Like, who told me this was okay? Obviously, I don't know what I'm doing. And you already have that just with a cleft or not, right? Just being a new mom is just hard. And you're going through the motions and doing what everybody's telling you to do. And advocating for yourself, I'm a pretty outspoken person, but authority figures like healthcare providers, and not to say that any of them did wrong or whatever, but I just went with whatever they told me because I'm like, you're the expert. I just became a mom 2 days ago. Obviously, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I advocated for myself a little bit during pregnancy, but after that, I just it's like, yeah, tell me what to do. But it's hard.
Yeah. Did they ever talk to you about tube feeding at all? Did they threaten that? No. Yeah, they were saying, hey, if you don't get her to a certain goal, we're going to start talking about doing tube feeding. And they were asking, like, when they did their rounds and stuff, they asked me, does Giselle like to eat? Does she want to eat? And I'm like, Giselle would love to eat. She just has to figure it out. Like, she wants to eat. She's like a total foodie. She wants to. It's not a matter of want or desire. It's just she needs to learn how. And so that was like reassuring to them that they could, of course they learn. And they learn so fast. Once they got it, it's like, they got it, really. And so when Archie was learning, did you choose Dr. Brown's? Is that the feeding system you used? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they provided.
Yeah. And did he do well once he
figured it out? And it honestly didn't take him very long to figure it out. I think he was so hungry. He was like, please help me. So yeah, once he figured it out, we were golden.
Yeah, I think with Giselle, it was just trying to regulate it to go down because everything in the beginning was coming out of her nose. And so she was sneezing a lot of it out. So just like figuring out how to actually get it down versus having it come up. And it did once she got a bottle because I was trying to breastfeed her because they were telling me to do that. And so just moving into like after once Archie has figured all of these things out, did you all decide to do the NAM or was that a part of his journey at all?
It was. So we got it, I think, a little bit later than most babies do. He didn't get it until he was about 3 months old. There was like some insurance differences and stuff mixed in there. But also, I don't think his surgeon didn't feel very conflicted with his cleft. Like he felt like very confident in being able to repair it. So we did taping, which was awful. initially because you're putting tape on their poor little skin and then ripping it off. And no one told us about base tape. So I was putting tape on and then like taking it off, like trying to do that in the bathtub or use lotion to help like peel it off in his poor little cheeks. And so I remember just like any little thing, I would go to Facebook on the Cleft Mom support and be like, this is what's happening, help me. And someone told me about base tape, thankfully. But the Nam we got at 3 months old. And so he just was not about that. Like he hated it and it broke my heart. Like anytime we had to put it in and he just screamed and screamed. So then he had that and then attached to it was like a little nasal stent that goes and tapes up to his forehead to lift his nostril. And so poor thing was just not okay with it. And so we honestly were not good about using it. The tape, I think, is what saved us because his cleft was moving in. But I think it was just really the tape because we weren't really doing too much with Mom. I felt so bad hearing him scream about it. And I thought the tape's working. So it's not like it's all lost.
Yeah. No, I've seen so many moms. Like, I don't know if I would have been able to do it. So, for example, and this is a little bit different, but when Giselle was born, there was some suspicion that she may have PRS. So with PRS, they have the smaller chin. And the chin is like the cause of the palate because the palate didn't, I think the chin was fused to the mouth. I don't know. But anyway, that's the cause of the cleft palate. So they were suspecting that. So what happens is they do jaw distractions. And so they put pins that you have to turn every day. So like to expand their jaw. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. And thankfully, I did not have to do that because Giselle doesn't have PRS. But it was just one of those things that are like really heartbreaking, like to think about. Now, I've talked to some surgeons and they're like, it sounds really awful, but it's not like what you're thinking. Like you are experiencing more pain than the child. Because of just thinking about it. But and of course it's a life-saving. And so I don't know, I like look in the groups as well, like these parents that are like really struggling, their child is not, they're not doing well with the NAM, they're really screaming and just not doing well. And then I've also heard of people say that it shouldn't be that way. If it's a good NAM, right? If the orthodontist or pediatric dentist has done it, it shouldn't be painful or it shouldn't like bother them. But I don't know because
I think it was more of having something constricting him in some way. I will say both of my children hate anything that confines them. So I think it was just cut him off. And then two, you're sticking something in his mouth that like he's not used to or doesn't know because he was older. So he had gotten it maybe as a newborn, like true newborn, I think it would have been fine. I think because it was at the 3 month mark, he was a little bit older and was like, no. We tried pacifiers. It's so silly because he couldn't hold them in because he had the opening in his lip. So we would put it in and either you'd have to sit there and hold it or we just took a little cloth flexi cloth thing. And just like in the olden days when you go to the dentist and your face is just with the cloth. So we did that. Obviously, we were watching him the whole time, but just so that it would just, and it wasn't even like just sticking it to his face, but just so that it can be a little carrier for the pacifier to just hold it in place for him. But I mean, it wasn't very often. So I think just anything in his mouth was like, what are y'all doing to me? And just, yeah. I mean, we did find a couple of rough edges on it and that they would have to sand down. And that kind of helped. But I think just having the tape and just everything on his face, I think he was just like, no, thank you.
Yeah. And I think from what I've learned from surgeons, the NAM isn't for everyone also. And also, depending on the cleft, the taping is just fine. And and especially the surgeon feels pretty confident that they can. I mean, that's what you want. You want the surgeon to feel confident about the repair because that's the purpose of the NAM. I mean, if you were getting that message that, you know, they really didn't, it's just like an added thing that you could do, but not necessary. And so you did all this preparation for lip repair. So what was, I guess, the day that you were going into surgery, or how did you feel the week up, like leading up to this
He,
change?
he had his lip repair the Monday after Mother's Day. And I guess leading into it, I was like, okay, like this is what we're doing. Like I was pretty okay that morning waking up, and then they have to fast. So again, he's hungry and crying, and that was hard. And then just sitting in the hospital room, like in pre-op, where you're just like waiting, and he's in a hospital gown, and it's all big for his little tiny body, and um, that was really tough. And then even just through the procedure, just waiting and waiting. I think his surgery was only a few hours, like maybe 3 hours. He had a unilateral cleft, so it was just affecting one side. So I think it was like quicker than what obviously what a bilateral cleft would be. Then they came and got us, and we went in. And to be 100% honest, I had this moment of, oh gosh, because I didn't recognize him at all. I was like, that's not my kid. He's puffy, swollen from anesthesia, and he just went through a major surgery. And then also his lip is closed. And it took me probably about a week to like fully connect with him again, I guess. Like I just didn't recognize him. This is not my kid. Like I knew he was, obviously cared for him, but like he just looked so different from the baby I gave birth to and the baby that I knew just a couple of days ago. I'm so happy that I did take pictures of him with his cleft lip, and I did take pictures of his cleft smile. Sometimes they smile. He would giggle in his sleep sometimes. Like I'm so grateful that I have all those. I thought initially, okay, I'm taking these, but I'll probably end up deleting them after his lip is repaired. But I am truly so happy that I have all those, because that is who he is, repaired or not. And that's just, I have that, and I have those for memories and for him so that he can see as he gets older. And he even knows, like when he sees baby pictures, that's him. And yeah, but it was a really hard time, but I think obviously it was for the better for him. And we still had the palate to tackle, but we had one surgery down, and we knew what to expect a little bit for the next one. Get any easier, but
Yeah, I think that people don't realize that. And I'm glad that you said that about not recognizing your baby. And not that you feel any guilt over that at all. As I've had these conversations with so many moms, that is a common theme where they're like, you walk down the hallway to go see your baby, and that's not my baby. And I think that someone told me one time, I feel like they should tell you, like, hey, you're going to be in shock because of just the change, the way that it feels like a different baby, or it's not, you don't have the same face. And it's going to take you a little while to adjust to that. And the fact that you may miss or mourn that first smile. And it's when you're pregnant, you had all these thoughts and this way that you're going to, like, how am I going to be able to handle a baby that has a cleft, and how is the world going to perceive them, and all of these thoughts that you may have. Am I going to be able to connect with my baby because they're cleft? And then you fast forward to having their repair, and you're like, that's not my baby. Or you have this moment of disconnect from them. And so I think that feeling, if anyone listening right now, if you are struggling with that, it is a common theme that many mothers have after that initial surgery. Now, for the lip repair, he's had his palate repaired, right?
mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, and which one do you think was the most challenging to you?
I think the palate repair. He got that at 10 months old. And just think of having your entire, like the roof of your mouth moved and stitched and everything, like just sounds incredibly painful. I'm glad they do it during infancy, because that would be so traumatic, which I know like we have another palate procedure coming up in a few years, but just like watching him be so hungry post surgery, because again, like you have to fast. And so he was just so hungry. And then they give you syringes to try to get milk down. It's not good. And he's 10 months old. So at this point, he's like guzzling 8-ounce bottles, like nothing, and like eating some foods. And just watching like his cry, I don't think that will ever leave me. Like just his painful cry for help was just so heartbreaking. So I'm like holding him and he's so hungry. So he's guzzling milk down, but you could tell every time like it's hurting him, but he's just trying to get something in his tummy. And that's just survival mode. But that was really hard. And then just the hospital stay is hard too, just because I feel like anytime you get your baby to sleep, they come in to check vitals and you're like, "Will we wait? Can you come back later, please?" And then the lights are all on. And then I'm like, no, let's just try to get him back to sleep. Thankfully, we were at such a great hospital. And so they were very understanding in that he was like in this little crib. And you're like, we'll come back. Like, thank you. But it just feels, man, I just got him to go to sleep and here just doing their job. I can't fault them for that. But yeah, I think that was hard, and just watching him suffer through that. And I can't do anything for it. Yeah. It would not let me see the inside of his mouth. I think I got like one picture of it. Just so happens because he was yawning or something.
Yeah. Giselle was literally, she would fight me. She would not have pictures. It was literally just hurling over. I'm trying to get a picture of it. I just wanted to see it to make sure it looked okay. And she was like, no, not happening, Mom. But she had always been that way. Even when she was a baby before her repair, she wouldn't let me go in her mouth. But she was really good at the doctors. But they always had the wooden thing. And so she would let them do it when we were there. But outside of that, she said, we're at home hanging out. No way, Mama. And so I guess I always like to provide something that's like a good takeaway for moms. What was the best way that you found to give him comfort during those really hard times? What did he take to?
Just mama cuddles, snuggles. I just held him as much as I could. It's hard. You're tired. They're tired. They're in pain. You're not in their type of pain, but you're also in pain with them, that empathy pain. And I would just say, just cuddle them and just give them all the love. And that's really all you can do. Make sure that their pain is being managed. Like stay on top of the Tylenol and the Motrin. We did not skip a dose. I was not late for that because I thought if it was me, I would be like, come on, lady, you better be giving me my medicine. So I stayed on top of that until we knew he was starting to heal and feel a little bit better. And they tell you how long to do it and how to start weaning off of it. But I just, pain management and just all the mom snuggles and cuddles. Like he slept in my bed with me as much as possible. I did get him this little sleep sack because he did not do it. He refused. He would scream and cry, and I don't blame him because he wants their arms away. And so I actually found like on Amazon, a sleep sack where he could put his hands in like up, but it wasn't like his fingers were inside of it. And so he would like sometimes put the corner of the arm part like in his mouth, like something to suck on, but it wasn't anything sharp that would like mess up his stitches. So we found a happy medium with that. So that was very helpful, like anything but the no-nos.
Yeah. I always say, so this is so wild. So Giselle sucks her thumb. So I can't, it's attached to her. Like, what am I going to do? I can't take it away. It's not, people are asked to wean off the bottle before surgery and stuff like that, which is also varies between doctor to doctor. And that was one of the things I was like so worried about the thumb because... And I tried to wean her, and there was no weaning her. So we, in the initial, after her surgery, we had the no-nos, but she was so miserable. And I was just like, I'm just not going to do this. Like only if I have to use them, like if she's in the car where I can't reach her, or if she's asleep, then I will keep the no-nos on. And please don't, if you're kids, so don't take my advice to take them off. So do what's best for your family. But what I will say is that she healed just fine. I watched her I think like a week or so, I kept them on. We were really bad about it, to be honest with you. And I felt like she just wanted to have the mobility, and that was better for her, even like in sleeping and stuff. That was the best approach for us. But just to echo what you were saying about the pain management, I think even when you start to feel like they feel okay in those initial days, still keep on that schedule, because before you know it, they'll feel okay. You think that they're okay, and then you skip a rotation of pain meds, and then they're not okay. And so just like staying on top of that in those early days or the first 2 weeks is really critical and important. I think that it would save you a lot of heartache, and it would save your baby a lot of pain. Also, just like realizing, even though our babies like bounce back so quickly, like it's really fascinating. Just still keep in mind that they just gone through a major surgery, and even though that they feel jolly and more like themselves, you still have to be like, remember that it's still like a major surgery that they went through. What do you think is something that you wish people knew about children with a cleft?
I wish people knew just how resilient they really are. I think that was a key word during ClefCon, which was really eye-opening for me because I've always said that. It's actually things in my book, but I am so blown away by just how strong and brave my child is, and all kids with clefts. I like cried at his first birthday party because we'd been through it his first year of life, and like seeing all the people who were our people and were standing by us the whole way, sending us food, door dashing us food on surgery days and even the days after, and just being there as a caller, text when I needed to vent or cry about it. But it just truly is like just how strong they are. They go through so much more than some people go through in a lifetime. They go through in their first year. I think it's a true testament of like how we were talking about that once they learned the bottle, like they got it, they're good to go. And I think that held true with every step of the process, is that once he got it, we were on to the next thing. Um, we're in this like lull period right now where we don't have any procedures. We're seeing his cleft team once a year, but we're gearing up. It'll be here before I know it, but he's only 3. It's his palate expansion, and that's the part I'm really nervous about because that's the one he is going to remember. But babies are just so resilient and they're just so strong.
Yeah. Are they already saying that he has to have that one? Yeah.
He's a gap in his gum line. Keeping an eye on him now, and I guess we'll just see. We actually meet with our cleft team next month, is our annual appointment, which it's crazy how fast that does. I'm like, oh my God, we gotta go see them again already.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's actually good news that he has a tooth growing there. That's a good sign, right? Like that. Yeah, I
I
think.
don't know if they're gonna end up having to extract it or if it'll get moved whenever they do the palate expansion. That's actually a great question to ask in August because I have no idea.
Yeah, I think because the gum, is it in the gum notch? Yeah.
Mhm.
So that, I think that they would do it during, if he had to have the bone graft. But yeah, so you mentioned your book. Oh my goodness, very excited to talk about this. So you wrote a book about Archie's journey. So first, like, I know we talked a little bit about it during the intro, but why did you feel the need to write this incredible book? And then also just what's in it? What can parents expect from it?
So inspired to write it because, as I mentioned before, I'm in the like Facebook cleft support groups. And I don't know, like there was one night where I couldn't sleep and I was just scrolling through social media because that's going to help me sleep. And I went on to the support group just to scroll through and see what people were saying. And there was like post after post of parents asking for advice because their kids were getting bullied in school and they didn't know how to address it, what to say. Do they reach out to the kids' parents? Do they talk to the school? Like, how do they go about doing that? And that broke my heart. I mean, I was picked on at school. I think most kids are. But to be picked on something that you literally had no control on, just really, and to think that my kid could be picked on just really didn't sit well with me. And so I thought, okay, how do I try? Nothing is foolproof, but how do I try to prevent this for Archie? And so I thought, if I empower him and teach him about who he is, why he has a scar, what he's been through to get that scar, then maybe he'll have the words to combat any potential bullies, or even just answer the question of what's on your lip, what's wrong with your lip. And so I literally wrote that book like overnight. I edited it, of course, but I just sat there in a very short read, because if you've ever had to read bedtime stories to kids, like, you don't need it to be 50 million pages long. And it needed to be easy to understand for littles. But that's really where the idea of the book came from. I had no intention of publishing it, making it available. I thought, I'll just write this out like for him. And this is like a mantra that he and I can do. We always do affirmations in the mornings before school or daycare, but I was like, we can incorporate this. But I read it to my husband, and he was like, I think you should help. You could help other people with this. And so then I started exploring that. But it's really just Archie the Clefty. It's based on my son, obviously, but I think it's applicable to any cleft kid, and also kids who are not cleft affected, because it just really talks about the things that you go through make you stronger, makes you more resilient, and it makes you brave because you're going through something. And that's really what it is. That's the message behind it, is that I'm resilient, I'm brave, I'm courageous, I'm strong. So, and with each procedure or each trial, you gain more and more of these. So that's really what that is. But he loves it. He knows it's his book. He calls himself Archie the Clefty and knows it's his book, and he's just so proud of it. And he asks me to read it to him all the time, which I'm more than happy to.
Oh my God, I'm literally gonna melt.
Yeah, it's super cute. My look. And I'm like, I know. Because in the house, like, well, I have a daughter too. So that's not yours. Like, we're sharing things. But he's, no, this is my book. Like, it's me. And I'm like, no, yeah, I got you.
I love that. You go, Archie. Oh my goodness. Archie the Clefty, A Tale of Strength, Resilience, and Courage is available on Amazon, and we'll be sure to link it in the show notes so that you can purchase it on Amazon or wherever you purchase books. I feel like I can talk to Gloria forever, but just in closing, what do you think is the biggest lesson that you've learned along your journey?
I think the biggest lesson is that we can handle more than maybe we initially think we can. It's hard. I'm not going to take that away from anybody. Feel those feelings. You have to mourn the thought of a perfect pregnancy, perfect motherhood. At the end of the day, just know that you can do it. Your kiddo can do it. And you guys will both be so much stronger in the end. I think it also helped bond me and Archie to a different level, because I was his caretaker at home post surgeries. And it just created an extra special mindset and bond. But the biggest lesson really is just that there's a community out there too that really is wonderful. Everyone's been so supportive and so willing to share their journeys with us. And I honestly could have never imagined I'd be where I am now when I heard about it during my 20-week anatomy scan. But I'm so proud of both myself and my son for how much we've overcome. And I know that we'll continue to overcome the hardships that are still in his journey. But I know that he's gonna blaze right through it.
Wow. Thank you so much, Gloria, for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. And it was so fun meeting you and getting to know you at ClefCon too.
You as well. And thank you all for listening to the Our Forever Smiles Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. Be sure to subscribe and submit a review of the podcast wherever you listen. I hope that you've enjoyed this audio experience. Maybe you cried a little, laughed a little, but more importantly, I hope that you feel a little piece of reassurance and even joy in your journey. Talk to you next week.